Hi there, so my name is Tania Aitamorto and I'm here to talk about collective intelligence and crowdsourcing. But let me first pass on my greetings from a really fascinating event that I recently got to attend. It's called Burning Man and it takes place in the deserts of Nevada. Burning Man is a really fascinating community, and it's actually a city which is built for just 1 week. It's built for 70,000 people, and beyond the event, there's really nothing there in that area, so you can experience it only 1 week a year. Burning Man, it's all based on gift economy. You can't buy anything else than coffee and ice. Other than that, you have to be either self-sustainable or share your resources with others and get the others share their resources with you. And maybe surprisingly, the system actually works based on sharing. And what is really fascinating to me is that the event is a hub for creativity, beautiful art, caring, and the essence of humanity. It really is a utopia. And I was really lucky I got to live a week in Utopia and Burning Man again this year. And now let's get back to the topic of today. Let's get back to the reality. And it's really justified to ask, after my intro, how is Burning Man related to my topic? Well, it's related to my topic in two different ways. First of all, when I first started studying collective intelligence some 5 years ago, I heard it often that the topic and also we are utopian because crowdsourcing and collective intelligence, they are just bypassing trends that are utopian because they can never work in practice. But now, some 5 years later, we can actually look around and see many instances of collective action working in practice, whether it's crowdsourcing or other manifestations of collective intelligence. And the second thing is that almost all crowdsourcing applications rely to a certain degree on mutual trust and goodwill. And then it's really justified to ask when we design new crowdsourcing applications whether there will be enough trust between the participants so that the system can work, and whether there will be enough charitable behavior that the system can work. So now let's have a look at 3 emerging trends in crowdsourcing. But first, let's do some conceptual definitions together so that we are all on the same page in terms of definitions. We define crowdsourcing in the following way. Crowdsourcing is an open call online for the crowd to perform a suggested task. And that task can require knowledge, skill, or talent, and the power is within the crowdsourcer. That means that the crowdsourcer decides how long the process lasts, what is being crowdsourced, and how the crowdsourced input is being used. And when we use crowdsourcing, we tap into the collective intelligence of the crowd. Collective intelligence is based on a notion that a large crowd, a diverse crowd, can be more knowledgeable, and its knowledge can be more accurate when certain conditions are met than single experts. When we use crowdsourcing in knowledge search, what happens is that we extend the knowledge search from local knowledge neighborhoods to distant knowledge neighborhoods. So, for instance, in this case, where the Parliament of Finland, this picture shows the Parliament of Finland actually. So when they use crowdsourcing in knowledge search, they extend their knowledge search from their own knowledge neighborhoods to the more distant knowledge neighborhoods of the crowd, of the citizens of Finland, and that can result, when certain conditions are met, into a more efficient knowledge search that brings in knowledge that wouldn't have been otherwise reachable. And now let's have a look at those 3 trends that are emerging in crowdsourcing that I will be talking about today. Those are crowdsourcing for democracy, crowdfunded creativity, and crowdsourced sharing for money. Crowdsourcing is increasingly used in democracy in many different ways. One way to use crowdsourcing is to use it for knowledge search and deliberation in policymaking processes. For instance, what Iceland did a couple of years ago was that they engaged the citizens to a constitution reform process online so that they asked the Icelanders to send in their knowledge and information and opinions related to the constitution, and then the Constitution Writing Council took that feedback into account. In a similar way, the Ministry of the Environment in Finland used crowdsourcing in off-road traffic law reform, and also the Ministry of Justice is using crowdsourcing to gather information about the law that regulates about apartment buildings. Crowdsourcing is also a way for politicians to connect with the citizens, even between elections. One way to do that is what we are doing here in California with California Report Card, which is a mobile app that's developed at UC Berkeley with the Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom. That app asks for citizens to rate the government's performance, and it also asks for suggestions for policy agenda. So it's basically crowdsourcing the policy agenda. Another interesting thing that's going on here in California and actually here at Stanford is this company called CrowdPack that does crowdsourced political matching. I just came up with a term. I'm not sure if that's the exactly right term to describe that phenomenon, but let's start with that. So what CrowdPack does is they ask you to share your political preferences with them, and then they match you with a candidate that's similar to your preferences. And then they also share information about the candidate's dependencies in terms of donors. Also, they show how they are related to the issues that you care about, what issues they are active about, and so on. And also, they give like a direct way how you can try to influence that candidate. Another instance of crowdsourced influence is amplified. How it works is that if there's an issue that I care about, like for instance here the issue is about protecting wolves. It's kind of funny that we have the same issue in Finland about protecting wildlife, and this very same issue here in the United States. So however, if I care about this issue, I want to protect wolves in this country, and I want to influence that politician who is responsible about this issue right now. So for me, this is a pretty low threshold way to try to influence that politician, because I can pay a certain amount of money, and that means that Amplified will make a phone call to the politician, try to pressure that politician to change their opinion, basically. And then the last example about crowdsourcing in democracy. And this is actually about crowdfunding, meaning crowdsourcing funds online. There are several platforms that do crowdfunding for public services like Cities Investor. And how it works is that there's a project that you can donate to. It can be about improving the local park or adding some equipment to the schoolyard, like here, Shetland High School bike parking and so on. And then you can donate money for that service or project. This has raised some controversy here in the United States because, for instance, in one city, a neighborhood crowdfunded a private security force to protect the neighborhood from crime because the police wasn't able to resolve the issues. So it raised questions about, is this a right development in the sense that the wealthy can fund private services for themselves, and those services should be provided by the public sector, by the government basically. And if the government is not able to do that, will crowdfunding for public services then just like cover some of the loopholes, but then kind of prefer the wealthy, which is a justified question to ask. Okay, so let's move on to the second trend, which is crowdfunded creativity. So the first example that I have here is this platform called Patreon, where you can support artists and creators that you like. I wonder how many of you know this artist called Anna Kana. She's a really fabulous comedian and YouTuber. You can find a lot of her production on YouTube. I love her videos. I'm a true fan. So what I do is that I support Anna through Patreon every month. I basically subscribe to her work, even though that work would be free online anyway, but I pay a little amount of money, like starting from $1 a month, to support her creation, basically. So instead of like what we do on Kickstarter, which is another crowdfunding platform where we contribute or donate or give money to certain, like one project at a time. So how it works on Patreon is that you can support an artist on a more long-term basis, and that's a way to give them like a more sustainable income. And we can see that Anna has like 94 patrons, which is 94 fans who are willing to pay something for her work. And actually it averages to $12 a month that these patrons pay. And obviously this is not the only way how Anna makes her money. She has other revenue sources too. But what's interesting to me here is that Patreon actually brings alive the famous notion of Kevin Kelly of 1,000 true fans. That notion brings forward this idea that if you have 1,000 true fans and they are willing to support your work, you will survive. You will be well off, actually. So if we translate that notion of theory of 1,000 true fans to Anna's case, we can say that, well, $12 a month from 1,000 people, well, Anna would make more than $12,000 a month then. So she would be pretty well off. But she has a way to go because she has only 94 patrons for now. Another example that I have about crowdfunding here is crowdfunded journalism on a platform called Beacon. Beacon works in a very similar way as Patreon. So you basically choose a journalist or an author whose work you want to support, and then you pitch in with a certain amount of money. And that allows you to read their production online. And then you subscribe to their production, and that's a way for the author to get more long-standing support for their work than just for one story at a time. Let's move on to our last trend of today that we will cover, which is called crowdsourced sharing for money. And crowdsourced is in quotation marks because I'm not quite sure whether I would call the examples that I'm going to share crowdsourcing. In a way, yes. In a way, no. But in any case, it's okay for now. I'm a little bit stretching myself in terms of definitions today, so it's all fine. So let's talk about ride sharing first. So we know these services like Lyft and Uber and Sidecar. So, and how those work is that if you have a car and you're willing to ride people around in the city and you get some money for that, you can sign up as a driver for Uber, for instance, and then you take some shifts and then you basically give rides to people. And I, as a user, I sign up for Uber. I use the app so that I can order a ride for myself and I pay for it through my credit card. So basically, these services are taking quite a bit of market from traditional taxi services, for good and bad. And now there's a new spin on Uber. It's called Uber Pool. And how it works is that it's basically carpooling, like shared carpooling with people that you don't know, but you connect to them through the Uber app. So how it works is that, let's say I'm going from San Francisco down to Palo Alto and I need a ride. So I can log in on Uber and see if any other people are going to the same direction and ask for a ride and then pay them some money. And in a similar way, like if I have a car and I'm going from San Francisco to Palo Alto, I can offer a ride to some other people. And the Uber app will connect us and show us the ratings, the trust ratings that we have, reputation ratings that we have in the system, which kind of lowers the threshold of taking a stranger to your car. Another example that I have here are these parking applications that are becoming more common. One of them is called Monkey Parking, and it's trying to resolve the really painful parking problem that we have in San Francisco and in the Bay Area in general. And how Monkey Parking works is that if I have a parking spot, let's say I find a curb parking spot in my neighborhood, and of course it doesn't belong to me, it actually belongs to the city, but I place my car there because I'm allowed to. So I can place that spot on Monkey Parking, and then somebody else, when they are looking for a spot in that neighborhood, they can place a bid for it. So there's an auction going on for my spot. And if I get enough money, a good bid for the spot, let's say $10, sometimes I've even gotten like $20. So I'm willing to leave that spot, if it's convenient for me, I get that money. And vice versa, like when I'm looking for a spot in a neighborhood, I log in on Monkey Parking and I place a request to that area. And if somebody has a spot there that they're willing to sell to me basically through the auction, I can place a bid for it. And if I'm lucky, I might get that spot. But I'm basically selling and buying property that's not, it's not mine, and it's not the property of the person who is selling it, but it's kind of sharing something that belongs to the city and then taking money out of that. So that has raised pretty much controversy here in San Francisco, of course, for a justified reason. Now let's take a moment to think how the crowd and crowdsourcing is a message in all the categories that I just presented. First of all, in crowdsourced democracy, the crowd and crowdsourcing, they are a sign of that the governance is willing to open up to citizens' feedback and participation. And the fact that the crowd actually participates by either sharing their knowledge or by deliberating about the societal issues or by donating funds to public services and projects, that's a sign that the crowd actually cares. And in crowdfunded creativity, crowdsourcing is a message that states that the artists and creators, they want to connect directly with the audience. By using crowdsourcing, they express clearly their need for support. The crowd is a message of that support, and the bigger the crowd, the stronger the support. Finally, in crowdsourced sharing, crowdsourcing is a message about willingness to share a commodity or utility for a certain price. It's a sign of trust because two strangers collaborate to create that value of shared ride or a parking spot. Now let's get back to this idea of utopia for a moment, because that's where we started from, right? Often when we talk about crowdsourcing and collective intelligence, people get this idea of a paradise to their heads. They start thinking that, oh, crowdsourcing is great, it can work anywhere, anytime, it can fix all the world's problems, including the current problems of declining voting activity in representative democracies. And you know what? When I hear that, what I'm really appealed to say is that, oh, that's so utopian, that's so wrong, that's not true. But of course, I can't say that because that would be really ironic, right? And also, that wouldn't be the right answer. It wouldn't be the right interpretation. It would be a too easy answer. Because we already know that crowdsourcing is a very specific method that needs certain conditions in order to work. And what we also know that we are also already just in the beginning of figuring out how crowdsourcing can work in practice. Basically, we don't have all the answers yet. The experiments that I talked about today are a part of that figuring it out. They might work, they might not work. Most likely, some parts of them will work, and then they will evolve into a new formation. And those new forms might work better. That's also the mission in my research, to find out what are the optimal conditions for crowdsourcing, how it can work, what is its impact on society and all the stakeholders who participate in crowdsourcing. We do have some answers already, and if you're interested in those, please check my website and the publications there. Also, please feel free to ping me with your questions and your comments if you have any. I would love to hear from you. With this, thank you for listening. Thank you, the organizers, for having me. Have a good conference. Bye!